Time for another Confessions podcast. Thank you very much indeed for all the latest scandalous suggestions that you've been sending in. This is another audio array of terrible tales from the most sinful of audiences, the Radio 2 crowd. Well, this week we got bridegroom's brazen-faced betrayal. We got a turbulent trial on the Thames. We've got some soaring slugs and a catastrophic compendium of chemical compounds. Here it all is. Now, this is quite an interesting one. I think it might produce a strong reaction or two. We'll say it comes from Roger. Father Simon, I have to confess to a dreadful deed I did on my wedding day. Now, this is back in 2003. It's hard to confess to because it involves betraying my first love, but I feel that after so long, they might just forgive me. As I say, the event takes place on my wedding day. I don't think there are that many confessions that come in that are wedding day confessions. Anyone remember any? No? Okay. This was a day, says Roger, at the time was one of the happiest of my life, but my bride that day wasn't my first love. Now, my first love affair started when I was just 6 years old. It was with a football team, and I will just simply call them the Pride of the Midlands.
Okay, we could just upset a lot of people by saying, well, that's obviously
going
whoever.
to be...
Yeah. Could be Aston Villa, could be Birmingham City, could be West Brom, could be Coventry City, could be a lot of teams. Walsall, yeah, lots of other teams.
Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah.
There's a bit more of a clue coming later. I had been a season ticket holder for over 20 years by the time of my wedding day. Now, getting married on a Saturday in the football season is never a good idea, but planning dates prior to the fixture list kind of makes it worse. Although I have to confess at this point that choosing an 11 a.m. kick-off for the church service, I don't think it's a kick-off for a church service, as it is, anyway, was maybe to allow for following the football in some way in the afternoon. It wasn't for myself, you understand, but for other football fans who were attending the wedding. There is nothing more selfish than organising a wedding when there's football on, says Roger. He's not really pandering.
In his opinion.
In his opinion, yes. Obviously.
Which is correct.
Okay, it's already sorted. Now, for the past 2 seasons, I had purchased a junior season ticket next to my own seat. This was used by a friend's 10-year-old son and my soon-to-be stepdaughter at various times. It was also possible to upgrade the ticket to a full adult ticket on the day of the game by going to the ticket office and paying a £12 supplement. On a few occasions, the lady I was about to marry had come with me and we had upgraded the seat from a junior to an adult. Now, this is all relevant. The wedding ceremony was splendid, I have to tell you, Father Simon, with my football-hating wife looking very lovely in her cream dress. Just slips that in at this point. Wife doesn't like football. Afterwards, the reception took place in a magnificent marquee on my parents' lawn. Speeches went well, if brief. Cake was cut quickly, and everyone had a jolly good time. It was about 2:10 when all the food had been eaten that my new wife whispered those magic words to me, the words all grooms long to hear on their wedding day. I've got the season tickets. Now, with the drive to the romantic honeymoon hotel planned for later on, and I had only partaken of 1 glass of champagne, within minutes we left the bemused wedding guests and were on our way to one of the country's finest stadiums by Junction 6 of the M6, in case you're trying to work that out.
Right.
So
I'm going to guess this is Aston Villa.
I think you're quite right. Sorry, I can't deny where my true love lives, said Roger. Normally I would leave at 1:50, so I was really pushing it. You're getting married, Roger. We had to run from the car through the park to the ground. Everyone was amazed. We got cheered as we hurtled through the playground and past the refreshments kiosk. I felt so proud of my new football-hating wife running in her wedding dress and lovely white heels. It was only slightly muddy in the park. I don't think she minded really. Dressed in my new shiny suit with my rather large white carnation buttonhole, I triumphantly led my bride to our pitch-side seats. Even though the game was 10 minutes old, the whole crowd stood to applaud the newlyweds. I have to tell you, Father Simon, I welled up. It was a truly beautiful moment. But that was before I found out that we were winning 2-0, and I'd missed 2 goals, something that had never happened before, and I made sure has never happened since. I was, though, able to catch up with the goals later that night on Match of the Day. It was worth staying up for, says Roger.
He watched Match of the Day on his wedding night.
Ceiling.
Outstanding.
Having been to the match.
I did.
Really?
Yeah, Spurs beat Liverpool.
Oh, really?
Well, it doesn't happen very often.
Okay.
But she's glad she married you.
But Roger continues. It's not about me. Father Simon, I have to ask for forgiveness, not from my football-hating wife for making a run in a wedding dress, no, or for the wedding guest that we left in the marquee, but to my first love, the pride of the Midlands. You see, on that day, we didn't have time to go to the ticket office and upgrade the junior seat to an adult seat. We didn't pay the £12 supplement. I would frown on this behaviour from anyone else, so I need to frown on it now. The ticket said child, and she was resplendent in her wedding dress and was clearly a woman of more advanced years, says Roger, sealing his fate for the third time in one email. I hope one day my first love can forgive me. I have, after all, purchased 12 more season tickets since. Well, there might be quite a sharp division on this one. I'm just guessing. Let's see what Sister Rebecca thinks of Roger.
The thing is, as far as I can work out, it was the wife who whispered in his ear just after they got married, I've got the season tickets, I've got the tickets. So she obviously was game for it, wasn't she? Even though she hated football, it was like the beginning of their married life, and she was up for going to, the game.
I knew what you
So good
meant.
for her. So I don't think she was resentful. I think she was just being a wonderful, loving wife. I'm sure that the stadium, the people in charge, I'm sure Aston Villa won't mind, because they were all very happy to see the bride and groom turning up at their match. So I'm sure they don't mind that you didn't pay the extra £12. So I'm going to forgive.
Well,
although I don't forgive you for watching Match of the Day on your wedding night.
Spurs have beaten Liverpool, and it doesn't happen very often. Sister Bobby from the Priory.
We only get married once. I think, okay, I don't want to go off point here. Of course. Can I just say, he's forgiven for the ticket error. And they did miss 10 minutes as well, so you can take that off the price of the game. Yes, that's fine. I don't generally don't agree with things like that. However, what about the guests that were left? How did they amuse themselves? So I'm thinking I forgive you on the ticket problem, but I don't forgive you for leaving your guests for 2 hours.
Imagine though, weddings always go on forever. Imagine a wedding that was all done and dusted by 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, but
That's
it was
pretty
it.
good, isn't it?
Did they get so they'd got fed and they were free to go. As long as they were free to go and they knew they weren't hanging around thinking something else was happening.
It would have been hilarious if they just didn't know what had happened to them. They'd just gone to the football. What do you think then, Matthew?
Yes, well, I'm obviously going to forgive. Another point to bring up here is that they probably would have got themselves on Match of the Day if the cameras had picked them out as bride and groom, and she's in the full gear as well, so they'll definitely have been on the telly. Here's the reason why they're definitely getting forgiven, though, and that is because they decided to hold their wedding at 11 in the morning, as opposed to those people who think that they are going to hold their wedding at 3 in the afternoon, and therefore we're not going to be eating till 8, 9. Who are these people? You deserve everything that's coming to you. These people who think we're just going to sit there and and suddenly it's a problem if I go out and get chips before we go to the wedding service. Apparently that's frowned upon. We're not going to be eating till 8. Deserve everything that's coming. So for holding the wedding at 11 in the morning, well done.
Anyway, it's another Dry Time Confession. Nice to have the Dean of Deadliness back. And,
you're very kind.
And Sister Alice joined us for the
Alice, we like
for the
Alice.
first time. Are you a forgiving type, Alice?
I am, actually.
Okay, let's see how it works
Useful.
out. So this one comes from Peter, who he signs it, Peter, age 50, living in somewhere in Sussex.
Okay.
Dear Father Simon, I have a confession that has been in the waiting 31 years, and I need forgiveness, please. In the heady days of the early 1980s, I was a teenager completely besotted by the wonderful game of rugby, which, as you know, inspires important values such as integrity and friendship, which are key to my confession. Why the deep sigh?
Well, because it's sport, isn't it? Matt will just
doesn't matter.
rant on about
it's
it.
It's not actually. Really.
Okay.
I could not believe that despite my lack of talent, courage or ability to hold my drink, 14 other guys would week in and week out include me in their pursuit for glory. I was in heaven and our team was inseparable. As with every rugby club, we had an outstanding crazy lad, and ours was called Vince. Vince was talented, brave, funny, full of life, and on occasion, outrageous. I was in awe of him. One winter's day, Vince announced that he'd purchased a speedboat, where you do, and invited...
Where was this? Oh, Sussex, yeah, that's right.
And invited 4 of us from the club for an impromptu winter water ski. Having whet our appetites, no pun intended, he announced he actually lacked a towing vehicle. After much deliberation, I announced that my dad had a Range Rover with a tow bar and disclosed that as he was on holiday and I could get the keys, that might be an idea. What I failed to say to the excited crowd was the fact that this was my father's pride and joy, and I was not allowed anywhere near it. In fact, I was banned.
Oh, no.
Needless to say, within minutes, we were like cats with the cream driving through Croydon in a smart Range Rover with what can only be described as the world's shortest speedboat with a completely oversized outboard engine. Now, in the spirit of non-disclosure about not really having my father's blessing, Vince hadn't actually told us that our destination was the River Thames. Needless to say, Vince told us it was safe, so we took him at his word. Well, he had the boat after all. I reversed the boat down Putney Bridge slip and delivered a very smooth launch, I thought.
Wow.
We jumped into the boat and off we went, heading towards central London. Obviously where you go for a water ski. Yes. Being the weakest member of the team, I was invited to ski first. Well, tossed overboard, to be honest. I can't describe how filthy the water was and how scared I was as it was becoming evident that health and safety was not being strictly applied on this trip. To compound my anxieties, it transpired that Vince was not quite the able seaman we thought him to be, and had in fact bought the boat and engine separately, and they were not compatible, resulting in the boat being unable to get on the plane which is needed to get a skier actually out of the water. Therefore, this resulted in me being towed from bridge to bridge in a manner more suitable to a submariner than a skier. I was underwater most of the time.
Oh, no.
I was totally knackered and needed lifting back into the boat. At this point, I remind you that as we were all rugby boys, you can assume that we were carrying a few extra pounds. As my comrades tried to pull me from the water, the transom dipped under the water and the whole boat sank.
Transom?
We were immediately made aware of Vince's unhappiness, although it was my clothes that were floating off with the current. We somehow managed to paddle the submerged craft beside the Chelsea barges, where we stood waist-deep in mud, and bailed it out. Clearly the engine didn't want to work. As we fruitlessly paddled towards Putney Bridge using our trainers as oars, we encountered a very kind fisherman who offered us a tow. Shortly after we got underway, the fisherman, hearing Vince continuing to deliver all manner of unpleasantness about his boat being sunk and the engine ruined, told Vince in the most calm manner that his luck was not the worst he'd witnessed that day. Clearly we were all baffled by the statement, and Vince stopped and asked what he meant. Well, said the fisherman, some idiot left a Range Rover on Putney Slip, and it's now underwater, as the tide has come in.
Oh, no.
Trust me, you cannot imagine how those words resonate in my head, even to this day. I'm confident that you can imagine the panic that then ensued. Where's my Range Rover, says Dad. Bottom of the Thames, I say. No, it's not really sounding very good, is it? We waited as the tide dropped. Inch by inch, the car was revealed in all its ghastly Thamesy slime. It looked terrible. However, to all of our amazement, the car, having received quite a bit of work once the tide had dropped, actually started. Wow. And I limped it home, where it received a very expensive overhaul. Having left the doors and windows open for several days thereafter, with heaters blowing, I eventually locked it up and awaited my fate. Dad returned and immediately questioned where his keys were and why the spare set was on the key rack in the kitchen. Despite best intentions, I couldn't quite bring myself to say, bottom of the Thames, Dad. So I went into denial mode, coming up with the most feeble excuse that I'd noticed that the sunroof had been left open while he was away, but not before it had rained for a couple of nights, and I assumed you'd taken your keys with you, couldn't find them, used the spare set. To my amazement, he believed me. Several weeks later, Dad had to return the Land Rover because the dashboard was starting to curl up and the whole car was smelling horrendously. Clearly, having told them it was about the sunroof being left open, Land Rover were quite rightly laid the blame at Dad's door, and he had to pay a considerable sum to have it repaired. Oops. Do I have your forgiveness, Simon and the team, Peter, age 50, living somewhere in Sussex now. But anyway, and it was his story caught my eye because it said, I sank my dad's car in the Thames, which is always a promising start. Let's see what Sister Alice is made of. Do you forgive Peter? What do you think, Sister Alice?
I don't think I do, actually. I think this is a classic case of sort of male rugby bravado mixed with male miscommunication.
Nice.
I just think no.
No forgiveness. You're sterner than you look, is what I'm thinking. What do you say, Deadly?
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't forgive either, really. Should have been more honest with him, to be honest.
What, with Dad?
Yeah, I think so.
I sunk your car, Dad, I'm sorry.
I mean, there's mud in there and all sorts of stuff. It starts to stink to high heaven, doesn't it, as well, by the sound of it. And at first I was sort of trying to be sympathetic, because Vinny's boat came off worse in a way, didn't it? Because we don't know what happened to that, generally. And it was a bit of a mistake, I suppose, although the Thames is tidal, so you should have thought of that, really.
Working it out as you go along.
Yeah, I think you should have been more honest with Dad. Just say what happened. Fess up.
Okay. Well, the boat sank and the car sank. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah. Let's start with Vince, who, depending on your point of view, is either a zany prankster who's great for a laugh, or the worst kind of insufferable waste of space. I, frankly, haven't got much time for either him or... Here's the thing. The Thames goes in and goes out. How is he not know? How are you not knowing that tides come in and come out, and you've decided to park your Range Rover, or rather your dad's Range Rover, in full view of the Thames, and it's going to come in and it's going to flood your car? So, no, I would have gone absolutely nuts at you. So I am definitely not going to forgive you.
It's confession time. The Sister Bobby from the Prior is back in. Sister Rebecca.
Yes.
We missed you yesterday very much, but you obviously had other private matters to attend to. So tonight's comes from Laurie. Thank you very much indeed, Laurie, for this. Dear Friar Simon and your motley gaggle of monks, I'm writing to you in the hope that I can be forgiven for a hideous crime committed against a certain strain of God's creatures. Some years back, let's say the mid-90s, well, either is the mid-90s or it isn't, but anyway, I had a garden. Nothing fantastic, a lawn, a shed, bit of patio and a flower bed, all nicely wedged between two similar gardens. Mine was second in a row of 5. To make the garden more appealing, we, which is my ex-wife, she being the other person who still has the said garden, planted some pansies. These we nurtured with much love, care and attention. They were our pride and joy. On work days, when I had to get up early and travel by car to my place of regular employment, if the weather was sunny, I would go into the garden, take the air and say good morning to the pansies.
As you do.
Revel in their loveliness and smile at their pretty purple upturned faces. I was often struck by the thought that they were watching the aircraft... What, Laurie?
What?
Is this like 1967 or something?
Okay.
Anyway. I was often struck by the thought that they were watching the aircraft stuck in the holding pattern above Heathrow, but I digress. Yes, Laurie, in fact you do.
That sounds like an Elton John song.
It does, doesn't it, really? Now, as many of your listeners know, beautiful flowers are the prime targets of slugs and other garden pests. Now, imagine my horror when I saw my little friends under attack from slugs the size of a small South American country. Yellow, black and brown monsters intent on nibbling. Well, do they nibble? Asks Laurie, a possible homework question. Nibbling the petals and the leaves willy-nilly until all life had been extinguished from my lovely pansies. Well, what to do? I had no wish to handle these slimy intruders, so a stick was found, a bamboo stick about 1 yard long, quite springy. I found it quite easy to get a slug on the end of said stick, and with a quick flick, send it over the fence to my neighbour Dave, and sometimes even further than that. Why are you looking all puzzled?
No, I'm not. I just know where this is going, but go on.
On the other side of Dave's garden is a large parking area with garages and the rear loading area of the local corner shop. Quite a big shop, really. Big enough to have lorries delivering at this time of the morning. Anyway, with a mighty flick, the slugs would be banished to the concrete wasteland of the car park and be too far away to slither back to my flowers. Thank you very much indeed. I made quick work of them. Departure time for work was fast approaching. I must have launched at least a dozen into space. Satisfied that my baby pansies were now safe, I exited the back gate towards my car, ready to do battle with the M1. As I got to my car, I could not help but notice that the Mother's Pride delivery man, who had an extremely puzzled look on his face, was standing there, and he was looking from his tailgate on the lorry to the sky and then back down again. "What's wrong, mate?" I asked in my cheerful fake Cockney accent, the one that you use with all delivery drivers. Yeah. These are stage directions from Laurie. He says this is the accent that I use.
But it is the accent that you always use. Well, always.
It might be as well.
Yeah.
"What's wrong, mate? You look confused," I say. "I can't understand it, governor," he said.
Oh, right, of course.
"It's raining slugs. They keep dropping all around me. Look at the state of my truck."
Chimney.
Sure enough, it's fair to say many slugs had come to rest on his windscreen and engine bonnets. Not fun. We got I'm still. What voice am I doing now? Oh, fake Cockney. It's all the same, really. Yes, I say we get a lot of that round here. It's because we're top of a hill, and we get strange weather. Perhaps it's an invasion or something. Anyway, I got in the car and left, and that appears to be the end of the story. So here we go with forgiveness, please, Father Simon and your team, for hurting slugs, who I'm sure are very nice, really, but were not being nice to my pansies. For confusing delivery drivers early in the morning with obvious untruths about weather patterns and slugs falling from the heavens, because in general they don't. And for the customers who never understood what the slimy trails on their bread wrappers actually were. And mostly for my fake Cockney accent, which I still to this day use on all sorts of people as the mood takes me. So you see, it's Laurie, it's not me, and I had clear stage directions, and if someone tells me to do an accent which I can approximate, then I'm duty-bound to give it a go. It's in the licence. OK, so Laurie and his slug-flicking activities, Sister Rebecca, what say them?
I really hate slugs, especially the ones, the kind of orangey ones, kind of yellow. There are some brightly coloured slugs, aren't there? They're really disgusting.
Are
I think so. Am I right in that,
Not
Matt? You've got a garden. You've got a garden?
Yeah,
no?
but
Anyway,
yes.
I digress. I think that the slugs on the windscreen, I mean, what's the fuss? You can just take them off, really, and clean the windscreen. But what I can't forgive is the bit about the bread. If it's true that there were slugs landing on the bread and that bread ended up on the shelves and people bought it, then that is just vile. He could have just put the slugs somewhere else. He didn't need to throw them away into his neighbour's garden and into the car park.
It's only mucus, you know.
Is it only mucus? That's fine then.
Yeah.
Would you like some slug trail on your piece of toast tomorrow morning?
They have two types of mucus as well.
Oh, do go on.
There's a light one and there's a heavy one.
What's the difference?
One's lighter and one's heavier.
Okay.
Anyway,
and it's fine to eat, yeah?
No.
Anyway, I'm not going to forgive for that reason.
Sister Bobby from the Priory.
Yeah, he lost me at the throwing onto a hard standing, actually, I have to say. I don't mind about the bread. I don't mind about his windscreen. All that is funny. But you can't launch animals, even the slimy, ugly ones, onto concrete hard standing. So, unforgivable. No, you can't, Simon.
Now, Brother Matthew, the voice of slugs everywhere.
I've got no problem with throwing slugs. But here's the thing. How's the slug surviving the flight? That's what I want to know. And how are they getting... Because if they're getting onto the bread and they're leaving a trail, then some of those slugs will have survived the flight. And if they have, then that's bad news. Because if slugs can fly and even survive being catapulted by a bamboo stick, we're all in trouble.
They
slugs,
can't fly.
Yes, well, they might...
and they didn't survive.
They might think to themselves, oh, look, now we can fly, let's evolve into flying slugs. Big trouble for everyone then, and for that reason, I am going to forgive.
Excellent.
Yes.
You sure?
Yeah.
So as we await the salad, the post 6 o'clock salad, we have a confession for you from Gareth. Gareth, thank you very much indeed for tonight's tale. Dear Simon and the laymen and women of leniency. Not bad, though. This confession is sent in the hope that we'll finally get one of the family misdeeds forgiven, and was prompted by the confession by proxy that you aired recently on the dad who, as a child, had thrown food from the evacuee train, which was great fun. Don't look puzzled there, Nigel. It was a train of evacuee children, and they were heading north, and they were served some horrible chicken soup, and so they threw it out at the station at all the passers-by who'd gathered to cheer them on their way.
Ooh.
And then at the next station, they threw out the next course, and then the last course was rice pudding, and they threw that out at everyone who'd gathered at the station. It was a very good tale.
That is a brilliant one, of course, particularly in wartime when there would have been food would have been a commodity.
Hey, well, thanks for listening. Wade.
I do quite a lot.
When we did that. You can download the podcast, of course, if you miss any of them. Confessions at bbc.co.uk. Last week's collection available now. Anyway, there'll be another one on Friday. Where were we? So my own tale of convincing my ex-wife of prehistoric life on the Isle of Wight didn't pass your vetting process, so I'm offering you this one. That sounds quite good, actually. Anyway, Gareth has offered this one. His last one didn't get through for various reasons. My dad, says Gareth, who is still very much alive, despite what you're about to read, would have been in his very late teens or early 20s at the time. He was the eldest of 6 siblings, and one of them, we'll call him Uncle John, although he was just John at the time, was fascinated by my dad's chosen area of further education, which is applied chemistry. During one very warm summer, about 50 years ago, he practically begged my dad to show him how to make something explode. Well, now, Dad refused, not because of the inherent dangers, but simply because it was his brother asking, and you don't just give in that easily. Anyway, Dad eventually relented and got some iodine out of the medicine cabinet and the other readily available ingredient from a specialist shop. Now, this
that we're obviously not saying.
Well, no, that's true,
Okay.
and I am aware of this particular. It's not actually. I'm aware of this particular explosion, and chemists everywhere will be nodding. So the mention of iodine and explosion, everyone will go, I know exactly what he's talking about. But obviously, we're going to blur this just a little bit so that you can't go home and copy this confession. Anyway, so he went about getting the special ingredients from a specialist shop, and then he went about showing Uncle John how to make a particular compound that I will not name here for obvious reasons. The resulting crystals from the reaction are relatively stable when wet, but if they are allowed to dry out, they will detonate on the slightest vibration, with a loud crack and a satisfying, if toxic, cloud of purple iodine gas. This thing is so extraordinary that if one crystal moves against another, the whole thing will blow. If a fly lands on this, it will all explode. That's how...
I think there was a scene in Breaking Bad when this
almost
was
certainly. No, actually, that was something.
It was something different.
It was something even worse than
Right.
this. Anyway, Dad dribbled bits of his mixture onto the driveway, and in the hot sun they dried out quickly, and much fun was had stepping on the smaller crystals or dropping bricks onto the bigger ones. Life is such fun when you're a chemist. Once the fun was over, Dad thought nothing more of it, but a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Uncle John decided he would make his own batch of this mysterious compound, and hid the large jar of his concoction out of sight on top of the shed, so that he wouldn't get into trouble, and he then promptly forgot all about it. Well, the following day he remembered and clambered up some stepladders to retrieve his jar. He didn't notice that all the liquid had evaporated in the hot sun, and when he lifted the jar, it exploded with enough force to blow him off the ladder, and it sent tiny shards of glass in all directions. Fortunately, Uncle John was wearing his glasses, or this could have been a lot nastier than it actually was. If it were my dad sending you this confession, and not me, he would not be asking forgiveness of his brother, who has since become an intelligent and respected pillar of society. He might be hoping for forgiveness from their mother, who spent the coming weeks ready with tweezers to retrieve tiny glass shards as they worked their way back to the surface of Uncle John's skin. Ooh. But really, he'd ask forgiveness from the girl that John went out on a date with that night, who never really got an explanation for the hundreds of tiny scratches and the orange-brown iodine discoloration of his entire face, except for a little pair of panda eyes when he removed his glasses. Yours, hopefully, Gareth. Now, that's going to be a date. You're going off for the first date with someone, and their face has gone purple sort of orangey, browny colour, and he's scratched all over. Well, that's going to make you ask questions as to whether you're going out with the right person, unless you just think, I know, he's a chemist, so it doesn't really matter. So, it's an interesting... I just wish I could tell you more. I'm going to show you a video of this in a few minutes, because I've got a video of this very reaction. Anyway, Sister Rebecca's looking... pleased with this.
Well, no, is he asking for forgiveness for his dad for having taught his brother?
Yes.
Right.
Well, he's doing it because he was prompted by the confession by proxy. So it's forgiveness for his dad,
not for Uncle John.
And the girl.
Okay.
Whoever you want, really.
Anyway, I think it sounds nasty.
His dad showed it to Uncle John, so I think it's got to be his dad, hasn't it?
Does he not say at the end, that last sentence, that it was really the girl he was going out with that night?
That's very true. Well, the thing is, gosh, it's all very, very complicated,
and
isn't
the girl,
it?
yes.
I think
you're making it far too complicated.
This sounds really nasty, doesn't it? But he kind of made light of the fact that this guy had bits of glass in his face and
different times.
Iodine, different times. I was
that
thinking,
that kind of thing happened all the time in those days.
Health and safety these days, you wouldn't get anywhere near a jar like that, would you? But I think, good on his dad for showing his brother how to do it. But his brother, Uncle John, was not very responsible, just putting it out there and forgetting about it.
It was kind of Uncle John's fault, really.
If I'd been going out on a date that evening, I think I would have postponed it. So I think the dad is forgiven, but Uncle John should have been more careful, and he's not.
Have you ever gone out with a purple-faced person covered in scratches?
No.
No? Okay, just checking. What's the novice making of all this?
I have. Just intrigued at the end. Did the girl get scratches on her face as well?
No.
So it didn't actually.
I think it was
faces.
I think it was very clear. She was going out with Uncle John, whose face was cut with all the...
Yeah, and I just wasn't sure at one stage because it was the first date and they got a little bit over carried away and that she'd got cuts on her face because they were rubbing face, but obviously not.
We got that first time round.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. I wanted to make absolute clarity in that they're all bonkers, aren't they? And the fact they're still alive is remarkable. And I am a big health and safety man, but there again, I do like an inquiring mind. So on this occasion, I am going, Gareth, I'm going to forgive you for all that exploding nonsense.
Let's see what Matt makes of all this.
I am a big fan of the different times defence.
Yes.
I think basically if you've got a confession that's a bit near the knuckle, all you need to do is set it about 40 years ago and we'll go, oh yeah, different times. It's perfectly fine. I love all
the
of that.
evacuee train story being a
absolutely.
perfect example.
Yeah, exactly. And also, let's face it, no one gets into chemistry unless they want to blow things up. That's all that people who get into chemistry, when they're kids, they go, why am I getting into chemistry? Because I want to blow things up. So I am definitely going to forgive because of that.
Well, they were this week's confessions. Did it trigger a thought in your head? Is there something bad you've done you've never told anybody? Would it make an entertaining 4 or 5 minute story? Thank you very much indeed. Send it to confessions@bbc.co.uk. More in a week. And the Weekly Mayo available to download now and every Friday. Thank you so much.